it's funny. I feel like I've spoken to 60%, 65% of the media that is on this conference call, and it's only because things have been happening and shaking and cages being rattled. I feel like I need a press secretary to do like a press briefing every week, which, man, makes me very, very happy. I think everything has changed looking at the G1 special and looking at what's going to happen on AXS TV now that I'm the world champion. So, yeah.
Fantastic. All right, let's go ahead and get started with the Q&A portion. Of course, feel free on the right-hand side to start submitting your questions. We're getting a whole bunch of them already in here, and feel free to ask follow-up questions if you'd like. Anything Cody says that you guys want to follow up on, please feel free to send those in as well. All right, our first question here comes from Sean Radican with Pro Wrestling Torch, and he says, Cody, you made a big splash hitting the independent scene and tweeting out a list of opponents you wanted to face. Now, you are now the Ring of Honor World Champion less than a year later, and you're facing Kazuchika Okada for the IWGP Heavyweight Championship on night 1 of the G1 special. Why wasn't Okada on your original list of matches that you wanted?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, what a great question. I would say, because when I put the list together, I had a little brain trust of folks with me that we put this list together, and we wanted to cover a lot of turf with it. But the answer is I wasn't thinking I would be wrestling in any major companies. I know that can be difficult with contract laws and trademark and things of that nature. And the idea was that I was just going to do every hot independent, hell, it didn't have to be hot, every independent I could think of, and just be traveling and meeting folks and be on the ground and kind of grassroots start over in the industry for me. I had starting over. And it wasn't until I realized places like New Japan Pro Wrestling and places like Ring of Honor didn't necessarily need me to sign a contract. It's definitely a perk of being the son of Dusty Rhodes, for sure. That's not missed on me, that if I wasn't the second generation of somebody who's on wrestling's Mount Rushmore, I probably wouldn't be getting this special treatment. But they were okay. And in fact, I've seen why they were okay. It's been reflected in everything from buy rates to ticket sales to merchandise sales. So it's been really lucrative for everybody. But that's the reason why. Wasn't sure I was going to be able to cross, into every major company,
Fantastic. All right. A good way to kick it off. Now, here's our next question. This comes from Justin Barrasso of Sports Illustrated, and he wants to know, and a little bit of context to this, too. So you trigger this Saturday the eruption of 3 main events in the wrestling world in a 9-day span. In addition to the New Japan card, there are also compelling main events with Impact Wrestling and with WWE. So do you feel an obligation to outperform the likes of Brock Lesnar, Samoa Joe, Alberto El Patron, and Bobby Lashley in your match with Okada?
Honestly, I had not thought about the fact that I was part of kind of a main event trio as much as I think about an Okada main event match to begin with. I'm not in the habit of bearing other talent or other matches, but if we're being honest, which I've said honest like 6 times already, an Okada main event blows them all away. And I'm damn sure part of it. And I want it not only to be an Okada main event, I want it to be maybe for some people the first time they're seeing, what is Cody Rhodes, or Cody, depending on what we call me, what is it that he really is offering? Is it smoke and mirrors? Is it hype? I feel at this point, honestly, it should have worn down, but it didn't. So what is it? Did the substance match the style? and he's the absolute perfect opponent, because what's going to happen on AXS TV and at the G1 special in the USA is going to have massive ramifications, not just for New Japan Pro Wrestling, for the entire industry. The entire industry is going through this period. Some of the folks on this call have heard me say this. Everybody keeps waiting for, Bash at the Beach and the Attitude Era to begin again and the boom to start. But that's not how it's happening. It's happening elsewhere. It happened in these independents. It's happened in Ring of Honor with what the Young Bucks have been able to do business-wise. Pro wrestler shirts who don't work for WWE are on the shelves now right next to them, and they're moving faster. This is a boom. And for wrestling fans, which I'm sure we all are, this is what we've been waiting for. So this is an opportunity to see where New Japan Pro Wrestling and to see where myself fits in that boom.
Great. Follow-up question on that from Justin. He wants to know, so you are the newly crowned Ring of Honor World Champion, which offers an incredible lineage. But what makes the IWGP World title so prestigious?
I mean, it's already prestigious. If you look in the history of New Japan, I think there's an element of the idea that it's not been hot potatoed around, that the champion has had arduous matches and real sporting-like challenges. New Japan Pro Wrestling in this world of sports entertainment skews heavily towards the sports. And I think that's what gives it that kind of aura, just like a Stanley Cup or a major, accolade in the sporting world. I think that's part of it. And I also think, and I don't mean this to sound negative, I think New Japan has, for so long, it's been in Japan and it's been on New Japan World, and Wrestle Kingdom has beamed across our pay-per-views, but it's almost been the alternative. The idea that, the real hardcore, puro fans, they love New Japan Pro Wrestling because, it is sport as sport comes. It is whole. It is it can't be competed with its in-ring product. No one competes with New Japan's in-ring product. Nobody. But all the same, the show is part of this pro wrestling spectrum, and it's now coming to the United States. And I just think there's always been a mystique around it, that's a real world title. These other, these shenanigans. David Arquette held this one title. That's a real world title. I think we'll find out, because I disagree a lot when it comes to the idea that wrestling in New Japan has always been better than wrestling elsewhere, like WWE or WCW. I think wrestling is great everywhere. I think it's determined on the wrestler and not the promotion. But New Japan definitely has the reputation of always having had the best pure wrestling, and that's great. That's what makes that. I could have answered your question with just that, just the fact that they have that reputation already, and it makes the main thing, the title, the captain of the ship, means much more.
Great. All right, next question here comes from Sean Ross Sapp with Fightful.com, and he says, now, I know it's hard to measure or quantify 9 years compared to 1 year, but would you say you found more success in or out of the WWE?
Yes. But it doesn't happen without the WWE. Cody Rhodes wasn't in people's households. Cody Rhodes didn't have Mattel figures. Cody Rhodes didn't get the chance to be in there with guys like The Undertaker, Shawn Michaels, Triple H, if it wasn't for the WWE. So I don't mean to add to any conspiracy theory or anything of that nature, but sometimes I don't feel like I still am outside of WWE. They were my home for a very long time. I met my wife there. I went through some very difficult times, and I went through some really great times. Maybe a better way to answer your question is, the happiest I ever was in my career was when I was Intercontinental Champion. It was not only because I was Intercontinental Champion, it's because I was allowed to do what I want. And when I was allowed to do what I want, I had the face mask, What I said on the microphone was 100% mine. And if it sucked, it was on me. And if it was good, it was on me. And I was able to put myself into the two major, whatever you want to call them, two major rivalries based off of my own ideas. And I don't know where it got so hands-off or where I lost my balls in all this, but something changed. And I don't know what or don't want to point to blame. But now this has superseded that Intercontinental title run. This is the happiest I've ever been. I'm a villain, yet you guys saw when that title was handed to me, I was floored. I was floored. I didn't sleep that whole night. I just stayed up and just looked at my phone, not just social, just pictures and everything. It floored me to be the world champion. And I know my dad would say, hey, act like you've been to the end zone before. But, hey, man, I hadn't been to the end zone before. I know that. And now I look forward, hopefully, to being in the end zone on a lot more a regular basis. But, yeah, this is the happiest I've ever been in my career.
All right. Our next question comes from Robert Samo of fanboynation.com. And he says, Cody, as the American Nightmare, you have added to your legacy as one of the more talked about wrestlers in the 2010s. How does challenging for the IWGP title on Saturday solidify you as one of the biggest names internationally as well?
I think it's already been done, because the moment that I spit the beer in Okada's face in Osaka, our wrestling fan base, not just New Japan's, the wrestling fan base was polarized. The idea that no, you can't do the ex-WWE guy and the pure New Japan guy. Or, you know what? Cody has proved me wrong left, right, and central. I'm all about this. I want to see what Cody brings in his first New Japan Pro Wrestling main event. Or, well, we're not getting Kenny Okada 3. My gosh, I want my tickets refunded. It just created this absolute storm, just a buzz, just a total maelstrom of discussion. And I don't mean to get all promotery or carny or anything like that, but people forget that Dusty was a great wrestler and all that, but he was also, I remember him more almost as a promoter. I'm a promoter's son. And if ever you have people talking about a main event, what do you think about this? I don't get this. Whenever anything starts with that, you just generated a ton of box office. And I'm proud of that. I am. That's why I like really negative comments about myself on social, because I don't care. I'm in the main event, and it caused this stir of emotion. I can't focus on that. I have to stand across from this guy, and I have to see where I stand, where he stands compared to me, and where I stand compared to him. I have to leave it all out there. People, they can never figure out how much of wrestling is real and how much of it is show. Moments like these, man, they're as real gets. This is a Japanese proud world champion who's put on some of the greatest, matches we've seen in the last decade. Two almost, and just churning them out. And not to mention Shibata. I mean, these matches he's had. Shibata, most recently, Omega and Omega, but both the Omega matches. This is a moment, and I fully, I'm not going to be starstruck standing out there. I'm all about what this is and what we can make it. It needs to be more than, like I said initially, it needs to be more than just polarizing discussion. It needs to be the next day. Everybody weighing that opinion and essentially saying, you know what, I'm on board with New Japan Pro Wrestling. If I wasn't, I'm on board. Tell me everything about it. Sign me up. Tell me where I can watch it. And I'm all about this.
Great. Now, it's great that you mentioned your dad in that last answer, because we've gotten a few questions here that are about your family. and your family's legacy. So the first one comes from Sean Ross Sapp, and he wants to know, what kind of a reaction did your brother have to you winning the Ring of Honor championship this past weekend?
Well, it was a private discussion, but I know there's been such a competitive streak between myself and Dustin, such a competitive streak. And it was one of those moments where he let that competitive streak go. And he just offered me up what you want the most from your sibling, from your family. Just he offered me up that simple congratulations and I love you. And me and him have had some rough times, not just because of the passing of my father, but because we weren't destined to work as a tag team, and maybe not even as opponents. We're singles performers. We're single acts, and for him to let his ego go and just say something to me, it meant a lot. I love my big brother. I absolutely do. And if the shoe had been on the other foot and he became world champion, if he becomes world champion, I'll be there. I'll be there in the same way he has been for me. So.
All right. Now to follow up on that, this is from Vaughn Johnson with Philly.com and the Philadelphia Inquirer, and he wants to know, what does it mean to bring a world title back to the Rhodes family?
I don't know. I thought I knew. I don't know. I thought it would be vindication for me, but then because it's my family, it's more than that. I think it was, Dusty based so much of his career on pleasing the fans, on the fan experience. If you really look at his, contact Dave Meltzer if you want all the statistics, but if you really look at the shows he put on, the ticket prices, and things of that nature, it was all about fan experience. So a lot of fans look at me and still see a little of that. We're very different, and that's good, but they still know that my heart is in the fan experience. So it didn't just feel like this big win for the Rhodes family, even though I claim total credit. It felt like a win for everybody. And that's not knocking Christopher Daniels. It felt like a win for everybody who's followed the Rhodes. And it felt like a win for everybody who's recently followed me, who said, you know what, I don't like my job. I'm gonna bet on myself and try something different. What I'm gonna try is wild, and my family probably thinks it's a dumb idea, and we might have to downsize, and there might be a rough period here, but I'm gonna bet on myself because I have an end vision for this. So I think a lot of people just identified with it. I think they did, and so I'm glad I ended the 31-year drought, and I'm glad it's been treated as a real world title. I was curious that night. I was laying in bed, and when I saw everybody who I've ever met in this entire industry, and that is literally everybody, send me a message of some sort, some that I couldn't believe sent me a message, I knew how real the world title was. And if I never get that feeling again, I'm better for having had it.
All right, and touching on your family's legacy again, David Bixenspan wants to know, how much does it mean to you to be headlining in the promotion that your father was a top attraction for in Japan for many years?
I think of all things, and I can't speak for him because he's not here, and I try very hard. I enforce that others don't speak for him, so I can't do it myself. But I think he would be so tickled at this American nightmare, the idea. I think he would have such a good kind of respect for the pageantry involved, because everything has really been fitting me as of late. It's not too much, pomp and circumstance. It's that the wrestling is there as well. It's kind of the perfect build for me finally. And he always was, he always at least told me he was a fan of mine. And I had a feeling he really was, because he watched everything and always had his feedback. And backstage, he'd take pictures of me when I wasn't looking. Yeah, I'd hope he'd be proud. And I think the reason I say he'd be tickled is because he just had this fun relationship with New Japan and with the, with Japan in general. And the stories he would tell me as a kid about the respect of the culture, they still stand true today. My mother came over there, and one of the young boys from the dojo was sent to be her guide, and he never left her side. And an entire group of fans had gathered in the hotel lobby to meet her, even though she wasn't a public figure. He'd always bring me the odd-shaped Coke cans. He left his payday from an event one time in his jeans at the hotel, and that happens here in the States. You never get that money back, and they've contacted him and sent it to him. And just every story was he loved it over here. He got to reconnect with his son. Him and Dustin came over in January in the 90s, and I know he'd be tickled that I was working with Tiger and New Japan Pro Wrestling. He really likes Tiger too, so I'd hope he'd enjoy it.
Now, touching on, you mentioned the American Nightmare character. Josh Barnett from USA Today wants to know, the American Nightmare character was born in New Japan. So what is your perspective on the character, on where the character is and where you want to take it?
I know everyone's going to just cringe at my answer, but I'm going to say it. I hate the name. I hate saying character because it doesn't always fit in the wrestling, kind of zeitgeist of it all. But I'll say this because Josh is the man. I have just started to figure out what this is. I think initially, here I am sitting in this plastic tarp-covered room looking like a scene out of Dexter, smoking one of my favorite cigars and feeling like I feel as Cody Rhodes. It initially was just this name, this tag. And now there's this whole note of patriotism that has kind of rang throughout me, which I knew was there because I'm a diehard patriot, and American history buff is the only subject I gave a damn about in school. So now there's this note of patriotism to it, and I love it. And I love that it embraces the true idea that America is not that popular everywhere else. We love each other, but we're not that popular all around the world. And I found that out right when I went on my first tours with WWE. It was just stupid American is something you hear on a pretty regular basis. And the idea that the American Nightmare is the one to just, hey, we're not stupid Americans. We're all these great things, and I'll be the one to bring that news to you. I'm just figuring out, to answer the question in a simpler fashion, I'm just figuring out what this character is, and I love the direction it's going.
All right. Next question here comes from Raj Giri with WrestlingInc.com, and he has a question about Daniel Bryan for you. So this question says, Daniel Bryan has been talking about returning to the ring lately and sent you a tweet this weekend.
Yeah.
While he said that he was trolling, is that a matchup you see happening down the road?
Super speculative. I don't know. I know Dan just had a baby, and it loves his wife, loves the home life. I never totally understood why Dan was put in a position to retire. And it's not a conversation I've had with him because it's a tough conversation. If he wanted to, if there was a little pressure to do so, I really don't know. But I know that what we do doesn't need to abide by the guidelines of perhaps, say, the NCAA. What we do, there's a little bit more Shakespeare too, if you catch my drift. I would love that matchup. I would welcome that matchup. I want to solidify my bet with those who thought Ring of Honor cannot currently fill a 10,000-seat arena. I said we would do it with the talent we have in-house, but, I mean, hey, I think they may give me an exception if we were able to swing Daniel Bryan. I think one of the contributions that I have made, and it's not me single-handedly, so I'm not saying single-handedly, one of the contributions I've made is that we should be able to cross the streams a little more often. Wrestlers are not idiots. We're businessmen and women, and we should be able to cross the streams more often. Daniel Bryan built so much equity for himself in the Ring of Honor. He should be welcome there whenever he wants. And CM Punk, too. They both have a home there. And as much as the selfish side of me wants to be like, hey, we want to do it on our own, my God. Like I said, the promoter's son and me, both those guys, that's a safe place for them to be because the fans absolutely love them and would absolutely be all about them. And I would be more than willing to be the guy standing across the ring from just pioneers of the whole Honor family. And, yeah, so I'm game. You know, I don't want to put it back on him because there's a whole lot of red tape there. But I'm game, and I would love to make it happen, and I'd love to make it happen in Ring of Honor.
Now, to follow up on that talk, Jim Barcelone with the Miami Herald wants to know, is the door open for you to return to WWE someday?
Well, I mean, you've seen, as fans, we've seen everybody return to WWE someday, no matter what they did or no matter what the bad blood was. I don't think about it, and I recently stated, and I stand by it, there's currently not necessarily incentive, just because this has been so lucrative, and financially, I'll get to in a second, but this has been so lucrative for the soul. This has been so damn fun. This has been so damn eye-opening, and like, it feels like being part of a revolution, being able to, let's do this and let's do that, you know, just my brain is on fire in such a good way for the industry right now. But then again, and I hope this gives hope to those who haven't had that opportunity with WWE, it's also been more financially lucrative, which blows my mind. Now, I wasn't one of the highest paid guys in WWE, but if the incentive is to get to the big major company that has WrestleMania because of money, that incentive isn't there for me. I'm doing better outside. And it doesn't help that the Young Bucks essentially, you know, hand me about $50,000 at cash every time we see each other. And this is a hyperbole. I'm slightly joking here, but legit, they have set this deal up with Hot Topic, and that's been gangbusters for everybody financially. So right now, okay, maybe the door is open. I'm just not looking at the door. I did state, and I'll reiterate, I would love to be part of the Dusty Tag Team Classic. It's named after my dad, so that's just an easy reason why. And if I got to do anything with my brother ever again, I wouldn't want to fight him. I'd want to have him as my partner in that Dusty Classic. But I don't know what he's got going on these days, so who knows. But yeah, I'm sure the door's open. It wasn't left on the coldest terms. There's some people that are pissed off, and I wouldn't come back without a long list of demands that they wouldn't meet. So we'd be going back and forth forever. So that's probably why I don't think about it at all.
All right. To follow up on that, another question here from Jim Barcelone with the Miami Herald. When you left the WWE, did you get any advice from anybody?
Yeah, I mean, but it was before I left the WWE. I think if you can point at my post-WWE time and call it a success, which it's been a success, I think one of the reasons why is because I was planning the escape. It legit, like, you know, not hate that we're alluding to WWE as a prison, but it makes this, it's just the metaphor I have in mind I was for months and months, almost half a year, planning the great escape. Here's what I'll do. Here's the people I'm going to contact because they can help me. Here's some promotions I want to highlight. That's the reason the list was readily available. Here's some things I want to get the fans excited about, because I want them to know that I mean what I say. I don't want to be somebody who says, stay tuned, wait for the next chapter, and then there is none. No, I have it ready. I have it in my sights. And, you know, I had already started contacting people and, you know, basically saying, because I'd let WWE know this isn't working for me currently, and, you know, I don't know how I feel. And, you know, I never said I'm going to quit. Maybe I should have. Maybe things would have changed. But, yeah, I got advice from everybody. And because NXT has been the, you know, the welcome spot for all the hot independent talent around the world, those guys were readily available for me to say, hey, what should I expect from this guy? Or what's, you know, simple stuff. What's a good rate? What, you know, just, yeah, I got advice from everybody. Everybody in my friend, you know, circle of friends and more. Except my mother, who thought this was going to be a colossal bust.
All right. Now, the list that you had when you left the WWE, Raj Giri from Wrestling Inc. wants to know, has there been anyone that you've worked with that wasn't on your list that has surprised you?
Yeah, I mean, so many people. And I don't want to single anyone out because I feel like I always single out the same guy, but maybe he's the one who impressed me the most. But Penta, for sure. I've had a couple of interactions with him, and to me, it's just I would pay money to see that guy. I would buy that mask. He's one for sure that should have been on the list. And, yeah, there's a lot of guys. If Jerry Lawler, which I see him still out there wrestling every now and then, I'd love to stand across the ring with Jerry Lawler. You know, but again, I could sit here and we could just have me listing guys for 20 minutes. That's the beauty of the scene, right? And then I think the big, probably Kenny, but maybe it was fate that Kenny wasn't on the list. If that makes any sense, you know, maybe it was fate because we were fated to do this Bullet Club thing together, and represented in America and Japan. But that's one that's, I don't know if he was pissed that he wasn't on it. I know some guys were pissed that they weren't on it, and I had to tell them flat out, hey, well, I couldn't make a 3-page list and post it. You know, we're looking for just a simple picture on social media. But yeah, Kenny for sure.
All right. Let's see. We had another question here. This is also from Raj, and since you touched on Kenny, we'll go to this one next. How would you describe your relationship with Kenny Omega, and do you see any extra pressure in your match with Okada, given Omega's first 2 matches with him?
I definitely see the pressure. I don't know if I want to give into the pressure. Wrestle Kingdom match was one of the just coolest things I ever saw. And one of my favorite parts about it was I got to sit with an older wrestler at the time and watch it. And this older wrestler, who will remain nameless, was complaining about some of the things they were doing being so dangerous and then getting right back up. But then he legit changed his story about 3/4 of the way, and he even said, well, the people are as hot as they can be, so what do I know? And that was really cool because we see that discussion on social media all the time about, you know, that traditional style versus what's happening today. And it was crazy to see somebody turned to see someone's performance, someone's painting. You looked at it and started it, and they didn't like it, and by the time you were done, they were moved by it. That's damn. What an accomplishment for those two. And then this, you know, most recently at Dominion going 60 minutes. Yeah, no, I see the pressure. I won't give in to the pressure because an Okada Cody match is going to be different. A world title, a world champion versus a world champion match is going to be different. The fact that these matches or this match isn't taking place in Japan, this is happening here in America, is going to create a different atmosphere. So it just does me a little bit of a disservice to feel that pressure and give into it. I certainly don't want I don't want to have anything less, for sure. I just am trying my damnedest not to constantly be reminded of how wonderful what they did was, because it was wonderful.
All right. Next question here comes from Jim Barcelone with the Miami Herald again, and he wants to know, do you feel more comfortable now as a wrestler with your work in Ring of Honor, New Japan, and Impact Wrestling compared with WWE?
I feel like even with WWE, perhaps I would have felt I just think I'm hitting a maturity in the industry. The industry that, you know, my dad, his wrestling, his pro wrestling, and that 1970s, 80s era, guys spent a lot of time cutting their teeth, paying their dues until the light bulb went off. And I think I'm just hitting that new block where the light bulb has gone off again. And I don't think it has to do with having left WWE or it being with Ring of Honor. I'm sure that having all these new experiences and new opponents it's probably expedited it. Yeah, so yeah, no, I do feel more comfortable. Sorry for getting so long-winded. Yeah, yes, I do.
All right, next question comes from Raj Giri again with Wrestling Inc., and he says, you've mentioned pro wrestling being in a boom. What are the next steps that you think New Japan Pro Wrestling should make after this weekend's shows further expand in the U.S.?
I think they need to take a long, hard look at A markets here in the United States. You know, they're near the Los Angeles area here with Long Beach and as a wrestling hotbed. I think they obviously need to look at New York, at Chicago, at Miami. You know, they need to look at all the A markets and determine where they'd like to go next. We don't want this just to be another kind of mark in history where it was like, remember when they came and did that one show in the U.S. and it was really great and just something that's talked about as something they did. I don't think that's their plan. I don't think this is an experiment. I think if it was, they've already been proven right with the fact that the show sold out in 3 minutes. I think they need to start looking at A markets and shortly after the G1 special in the USA, I hope you see some announcements of, you know, coming here, and they have the ability to put the bodies in the building. So, yeah, I hope this is the beginning of seeing a lot more shows in the United States. I mean, they'll have a championship now that's represented, you know, as far as it's considered the United States championship. So that means you've got to play to the United States. Whether that champion's from the United States or not doesn't matter. But I think people are ready for it. I think all those places I named, plus many more, would jump at the idea to get to see Okada, get to see Kenny Omega, get to see Naito, Ishii, you know, Suzuki, Chaos. So they jump at the idea to see those guys.
All right. And to follow up on that, Sean Ross Sapp from Fightful.com wants to know, have you been given any info on when New Japan will be returning to the U.S.?
Of course I have, and of course I can't say anything. I'm sorry. I legit, yeah, I knew it was coming, but yeah, no, I've been set in on probably something I wasn't supposed to be sitting in on, but I'd say I'm fairly confident you'll see them in the U.S. again.
All right, and also as another question for you here, think you'd be doing had you stuck around in WWE with the eventual brand split that occurred after you left?
I think I would be sitting in Road Dogg's office on Tuesdays, pouring my heart out to him, telling him why I should be Cody Rhodes, and I think he probably would agree with me. I mean, with him leading the charge with the SmackDown Live, he's done such a great job. with guys who really want it. He's done such a great job, guys and girls, illuminating their strengths and staying away from their weaknesses. So he might have found a spot for me. I just know as far as it goes, you know, the more up the chain of command you go, and there's only 2 more slots up, I just don't think they at the time particularly saw anything in me as Cody Rhodes. And all I had to show them was a piece of concept art for what my gear was going to look like. So, you know, they might have thought that they were making the safe bet, but screw that. I don't know. I really don't know. I just feel like it wasn't going anywhere, and I haven't really thought about it.
All right, and then one more question here relating to WWE. What would you say, and this comes from Sean Ross Sapp again, what would you say are some of the benefits or detriments to wrestling in and outside of WWE?
Benefits and detriments?
Yeah.
Well, the benefit is that your product, what you churn out in the ring, what you're responsible for, beams everywhere. I've been in the gym in Saudi Arabia and looked up and seen 2 different WWE shows on playing, one pirated and one on, you know, the actual, you know, what the equivalent of cable TV in Saudi Arabia would be. So WWE, when you say World Wrestling Entertainment, is genuinely worldwide. So there's, gosh, an endless amount of benefits that come with that. I'd say the fact that they're worldwide and the fact that they have WrestleMania are the top. But I will also say that the fact that they're worldwide is a detriment as well, because if, like me, when I started, I was not ready to be on television. I was 21 years old. I had been taught a lot about our industry, but I didn't even really have a good set of fundamentals yet. And hey, he's Dusty Rhodes' son. He's going on the show. You know, I'm not going to turn that down. At 21, you're not smart enough to go, hey, hold on. You never get a second chance at a first impression. I wasn't going to do that. It was, you know, the idea of being on television, being a celebrity, that was fun. But that, like I said, being worldwide is also a detriment. It's really, really, really hard, as you've seen with some others who left WWE, to dig yourself out of a hole if you find yourself in a hole at WWE.
All right, and reflecting on your career so far, Vaughn Johnson with Philly.com wants to know, do you think that you've proved your naysayers wrong, fans or people within the industry, or do you feel like you have more to prove?
I like Vaughn. Vaughn's a good guy. Mo money, mo problems. I know that sounds ridiculous, and a ridiculous way to answer that question, but it's the truth. I can't prove naysayers wrong when this is growing at such a rate that it's creating more fans every day and more naysayers every day. I love the idea of looking objectively at maybe a criticism of mine and saying, you know what, they're right. But I also am aware that the fastest way to failure is trying to please everybody. And WWE is a great example. They're currently the biggest company, and they currently, if you follow just a simple hashtag on a Monday or Tuesday night, you'd think that was the worst show you'd ever seen. And who knows? It might have been a great show. The fans in the audience might have loved it. Some of the folks sitting at home watching on TV might have dug it. But that's the climate we live in. I'm sure, as we're all aware, is the bigger something gets, the more problems we will find with it. And sometimes you got to just say, hey, man, F that. I'm gonna focus on what these people like about it. Yeah, so I stand by my mo money, mo problems.
Awesome. So this will be our last question for you here today. And this is going back to the advice a little bit, related to the advice. Josh Nason from Wrestling Observer wants to know, based on any advice you've gotten, is there anyone specifically who has given you the best advice? And if so, what has been the most influential?
Career,
that is.
The most influential advice. It's you know what's nice about this is it's probably all come from the Bullet Club. Kenny Omega has kindly, whenever I asked, given me an opinion on what I did, and that's trusted advice. The Young Bucks have also been there, and they have helped be my eyes with this world, and that's been just wonderful. And all my old mentors, some of them who work in the office at WWE, have also given me advice. You know, I'd say though that the best advice has come from Kenny and the Bucks, for sure. Kenny and the Bucks, and I'll be honest, no, they're not the best. The best advice has come from my wife. You got to give her some credit. I walked away from a 7-figure situation with WWE. If you add it all up in terms of quarterlies, pay-per-views, royalty, you know, all that stuff. I walked away from a 7-figure situation, and she didn't bat an eye at it. She didn't tell him, didn't have any doubt. So whenever I've asked for advice from her, she's been brilliant in giving me her advice. So we very much, I had no problem being on Impact together as a team, because that's what we really are, a team in real life. My wife does not stand behind me. She stands right next to me, and she's the best.
All right. Well, that will go ahead and wrap up our conference call with Cody Rhodes here today. If you guys have any follow-up questions, please feel free to email me.